Recently on the Valuetainment channel, they had Alan Lichtman on as a guest. Alan Lichtman has successfully predicted quite a few presidential elections based on certain metrics that he honed in on and developed a system around. According to his system, he has said that Donald Trump is likely to not be the victor on November 3rd. As we look at all of his metrics and his conclusions, we can either buy what he's saying, or there's something a little deeper that he's skirting over. And that's what I'd like to bring your attention to today.
Okay, so why don't we go through the 13? Do you want to take the lead, or you want me to read them off?
You read them off. It's probably easier to go back.
I got them right here for me. So I'll go through all of them here, what you have. So these are the 13 different indicators that you have. Party mandate.
Before we get to that, remember, 6 and you're out.
6 and you're out.
6 and Trump is out. Right.
Sure.
So of the 13, if Donald Trump, the incumbent, is seen as having 6 of the metrics going against him, he's likely to lose the bid for re-election.
So let's just go through it together, and you can tell me who's out. So party mandate, which side do you choose with that?
Remember, all I need to do is say true or false.
Okay.
Because it's always based on the incumbent party. So if it's false, that's one key against them. And that one is obviously false because the Republicans took a huge beating in the midterm elections, which is that's what it's measured on. So one false.
So one false. So that favors, just so the viewers watching is, that favors the Dems.
Right. Or it goes against Trump. Exactly.
Sure.
Either way.
Party mandate means that the incumbent has both House of Representatives and the Senate being led by the incumbent's party. That's a party mandate. And Donald Trump, having lost the party mandate due to the midterm elections in 2018, does not have a party mandate. Okay. The reason why Donald Trump doesn't have a party mandate is because of 2.5 years or 2.25 years of Russia. One might say that Donald Trump was unwise to allow that sham investigation to continue for so long, but it had an effect where the electorate couldn't tell the difference. We're no longer even in that psychology because we realized that Mueller was a grotesque failure. Okay, Russia not only came up empty in 2019, early part of 2019, but since then, it's been uncovered that Russia was done on purpose. Usually, people want revenge when they find out that they have been deeply deceived as the American people. I don't think the opinions of the midterm elections are going to hold water nowadays.
Contest. Second one, no primary contest.
No, Trump wasn't opposed. That one's true.
Okay, got it. 3, incumbency.
He's the sitting president. That one's true.
No question. Third party.
Forget about Kanye West. Didn't even make it to the ballot. That one is true. So the first 4, which I call the political keys, only one false.
Only one false, which is the House. He lost the House, and they got a lot of work to do to win the House. Okay.
Yes.
So short-term economy.
Well, that's based on whether there's an election year recession. That was looking good until we got the pandemic recession. That one is false.
The pandemic recession is not Donald Trump's fault. And it's so patently obvious to the average American that even though that recession did hit and hit hard, the recovery has hit even harder. And the bounce back is obvious. The bounce back was possible for a number of reasons, but none of this is going to be counted against Donald Trump. And Alan Lichtman doesn't seem to want to factor in that the American people are not actually going to count it as being Donald Trump's fault, since it was specifically due to the Chinese virus.
Okay, 6, long-term economy.
That was also looking good until we got this relentlessly negative growth this year that drove the average down so far. So that's the third false.
This recent quarter, GDP reported 31% growth. So right before the election of November 3rd, the highest growth rate on record was just recorded for this quarter leading into the election. So people are probably not going to remember the fact that there was a recession and count that recession against Donald Trump, especially when they know that that recession was really due to the Democrats' cousins over in China, the cousins of the leftists.
7 is policy change.
Absolutely. He came in intent on undoing everything Obama had done. And he's mostly done it by executive orders, but certainly the policies now are very different. That one's true.
Social unrest.
That was also looking good until the death of George Floyd and the social unrest raging across the land. So that one is false. So we're now at 4 falses.
The death of George Floyd was the death of George Floyd. Most people can see right through to the fact that the social unrest was largely canned. Most people can see through it that it was AstroTurf set ablaze. Okay, it was fake grassroots. Okay, exacerbated by trained Marxists. So most people are aware that Black Lives Matter founders are on record saying that they're trained Marxists. Antifa joined in. Most people in the riots were seen to be white people. So it is not your grassroots brown people rising up type of unrest. It's staged unrest largely, and it was also exacerbated by the fact that Kamala Harris, which people know, bailed out Antifa members who got arrested so that they could go back on the street and commit to more unrest. So most people know that, despite the mainstream media. So they're not going to count the unrest against Donald Trump.
Scandal number 9.
My favorite key, the scandal key. And we can talk about it, but as you know, because I wrote the book, Case for Impeachment, at the same time I predicted Donald Trump would win, I also predicted he would be impeached. And he was. He's only the 3rd American president ever to be impeached by the full House. Richard Nixon resigned before that happened. So that one is false. That's 5 down.
Okay, got it.
Alan Lippman would have had a better chance claiming that Donald Trump's tax records are more of a scandal than the impeachment. The impeachment was put upon the president over a phone call that everybody could hear had no quid pro quo in it. Just because the Democrats in unison agreed to pretend that the phone call was egregious doesn't mean that regular Americans heard quid pro quo. So most Americans, they don't really feel that the president was truly impeached just because the Democrats agreed to pretend or play dumb in unison, which is exactly what happened. Most Americans see it that way because there's no way you could in your right mind, and most Americans are in their right mind. The majority of Americans are not emotionless nut jobs. So most Americans aren't nuts, and they did not join the Democrats in just picking up something, anything to throw at Donald Trump, which is what the impeachment was. The impeachment broke the Democrats' long-standing rule. It never failed to have bipartisan support when seeking an impeachment, which is exactly what happened. They failed to get bipartisan support. No Republican saw the tape of the conversation with the Ukrainian president as an impeachable offense.
10, foreign military failure.
Well, you can argue there have been failures on Bush's watch. But again, these judgments here have to be objective and nonpartisan, and they have to be based on how I called the keys since 1860. And we're talking about big splashy failures like 9/11 or losing a war. Nothing of that magnitude, so I count that one as true.
So that one is true. Okay, so that favors more on Trump. So foreign military success.
Yeah, I've looked around. He got nowhere in North Korea except to pump up Kim Jong-un. Gave up Syria to the Russians. Nothing accomplished there. Nothing accomplished in Iran or in Venezuela. Now, recently, we did have this UAE treaty with the Israelis, but it's a bogus treaty because it just says suspend annexations, and Netanyahu said he can unsuspend at any time. And the whole, God knows how many hours of the Republican convention, you've probably watched it too. One line on the UAE treaty, one line in Trump's speech. That's it. So I don't count that. So that one is false.
So that one is false in your eyes.
We're now 6.
Yes.
So this man counts false foreign military success. Trump got Baghdadi. He got the leftover Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And North Korea, as far as what I know, hasn't been shooting missiles over the top of Japan for the last few years. So I don't know how you would count North Korea as a failure if North Korea aren't even doing the same missile testing that they used to constantly do every spring. So that's not a failure. Most people wanted America out of foreign wars and out of other people's business. Donald Trump accomplished that. So only bloodthirsty hawks in this country would look at his overseas military record as if it was a failure. People like John Bolton, people who have reasons to want to engage in wars overseas, are the only people that would feel sad. Pulling the troops out of the Middle East after they've been there for 17 years. Most Americans are going to count that as a plus.
So now it's incumbent charisma.
This is the one I get the most flack about. But again, it's not someone's opinion, it's how it fits my model. And this is a very high threshold key, Patrick, very high. We're talking about the once in a generation inspirational candidate, like on the Republican side, Theodore Roosevelt and Ronald Reagan, who brought in all those Reagan Democrats. And to win this key, you have to be broadly appealing. Trump's a great showman, but as we know, he appeals to a narrow base, about 40 to 43%. And the strong approval is 25 to 30%. More than 60% of the American people don't trust him and don't like him. So that one I count as false. That's 7.
All I have to say is look at the size of Trump's rallies, and you know that Alan Lichtman right here is full of shit. You know that. It's facially obvious. Alan Lichtman is full of shit. Also, when you look at the issue of charisma, charisma is often seen against the backdrop of every other thing going on. For example, if history is sorely in need of a warrior, then the warrior will be appreciated for having liberated the people. If history is sorely in need of someone, a great orator, to explain things, then the people will fall in love with the man who can bring that particular medicine. At the time in history that we're at, history is sorely in need to break the dominion of a specific tag team. On the left, America gets punched by liberals and liberalism. And on the right, we continue to get punched by, or have our punches held down by, the rhinos. Most people who were caught watching the rhinos disarm their champions, we give Donald Trump a pass because we know that him being so-called rude from other people's point of view was exactly what we needed, because he was able to say and stand by the policies, the exact policies that we needed him to speak out on behalf of and defend.
So then that's all he needs. So, and then the last one is challenger's charisma, which is Biden.
So if Biden was charismatic, that would count against Trump, but he's not. You know, he's an experienced guy, decent guy. Just as Trump is no Ronald Reagan, Joe Biden is no John F. Kennedy. Okay. So that one is true, but we have 7.
So based on your prediction, you predict who will be president come election day?
Yes, based on my prediction, with 7 keys down and only 6 to count out the party holding the White House, I predict Donald Trump will lose, and therefore Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States. A reversal of my prediction for Donald Trump in 2016.
So Biden is uncharismatic, and then he says Trump is uncharismatic, and Trump's lack of charisma is counted against him. This is a stretch by Alan Lichtman. It's up there with fake polls where 70% of the Democrats are being polled. It's just there to discourage Republicans from going to the polls. So listen not to this bullshit from Alan Lichtman. The weakest one is a party mandate. If you wanted to give Donald Trump one false out of all 13, maybe that's the one you could count as false. So the other is in the true column. According to that, if you have a knowledge of the times, what's going on spiritually for the people of America, you know that that's 12 to 1 on all 13 keys in favor of Donald Trump.
The divine principle also says, in the course of history, people's spiritual and intellectual levels have gradually elevated due to the merit of the age in the providence of restoration. Hence, the quality of experience and the depth of religious and scientific knowledge have risen accordingly. Spirit and truth are unique, eternal, and unchanging. However, the degree and scope of their teachings and the means of their expression will vary from one age to another, as they restore humankind from a state of utter ignorance.
And so, as I said, Alan Lichtman doesn't understand the era that we're in. The era is actually guided by the climate in the spirit realm. The collective intellectual advancement of the people in the spirit world make up a psychological atmosphere that informs the inhabitants down here in the physical world. And according to their level of wisdom and how to actually get advancement, we're all coming into an enlightenment about how a guy like Donald Trump breaks the stalemate. The stalemate that the old Christian turn the other cheek right-winger doesn't have the ability to break through. He doesn't even want to do what it takes to break through. People do not like when you make them uncomfortable. And there are reasons why people do not like to hear the truth, because sometimes the truth sheds light on our weaknesses or past weaknesses or selfishness, the ugliness of our selfishness. And sometimes we'd rather not hear that. But, you know, a lot of times when you grow up and you get 10 years into the future, you turn around and you're thankful for people who gave you a needed tongue lashing or spanking. because you weren't really being your best person. Just like America, we realize that caring about how we look and what people think has cost us tremendously in terms of politics and the social war, culture war. We have shied away from saying what needs to be said because of the sting of political correctness, and somebody had to come along. So the merit of the age is in favor of a guy like Donald Trump. In heaven, Donald Trump is not seen as a sinner for the things that most of you leftists would think is so terrible. So you're not on the side of heaven. No, heaven would tell you, no, be quiet and take this licking because you're going to benefit just as much as the people on the right after things get corrected. And that's just the way it is. And so Donald Trump still needs to drain the swamp, and heads still have to roll in the deep state. So he still has a heavenly mandate and 4 more years.